Hi, everyone. We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are incredibly welcome to our channel, podcast stream, however you're listening to this, however you're encountering it. We are empathy educators and social scientists with PhDs who are vaguely obsessed with talking about culture, both popped and lived, as a way to help all of us live more cohesively than we already do. We have these conversations around popular culture here on our online channels, talking about everything from systemic racism and how it manifested in Bridgerton to the latest way that a YouTube beauty star is being dumb or abusive, to our deep and abiding love for most things Marvel. Anything that we can talk about that helps someone see the world in a different and more empathetic light, we're here for.
This video is part of our broader series where literally if it's streaming, we'll talk about it. No joke.
This is a bit of an exception to that, but we'll get into it.
We tend to focus mostly on stories by and about women or other marginalized and historically excluded groups. And this is a little subset, a chunk of that pop culture coverage that we are focusing specifically on videos, films that fit within that category of films made by and about women or other marginalized groups that are nominated for awards this season. And the reason we're talking about awards season is because awards like Golden Globes, Academy Awards, Emmys, mean something and don't mean something. And what we mean by that is, that doesn't indicate whether art is good or valuable, because a lot of times there's so much bias behind why those decisions are made. But they do mean something and they are impactful because they still dictate who gets money to make future projects. And so, especially as we've had a lot of conversations on this channel about the overwhelming whiteness of the Golden Globes and the Oscars over the last couple of years and their continued struggle with diversity of all stripes, we've got some really great candidates for awards this year. And so for today's video, we're talking about the 2021 film Judas and the Black Messiah, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Jesse Plemons, Landry from Friday Night Lights. And I wish I just want him to make a Hallmark movie, Jesse. Like, I know you're taking serious projects. Make a Hallmark.
If you could do something where we like you, we'd really appreciate it.
Because like
it's a personal favor.
Just think.
As somebody who once ate in the same McAllister's deli with you back in the day when you were filming Friday Night Lights, I would just like to issue a personal plea. Could I please like you again?
Please, because you were brilliant on Fargo. Did I like you? No. This also goes for Daniel Kaluuya. Please make something that's not horribly depressing. I know
also, if you could possibly, if you are Daniel Kaluuya listening to this, we know you are. Hi, friend.
Hi.
Accents are not your spiritual gift. That's fine. We all have limits. Could you make something where you're speaking in your natural voice?
Boy. Yes. And also we need to say how traumatized we were by seeing our beloved President Bartlett, Martin Sheen, as the, I'm just going to call a spade, awful human J. Edgar Hoover.
About to say the historically known cretin J. Edgar Hoover.
Like burned my irises with that, Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, fantastic cast. It is the story of the infiltration of the Black Panthers by the FBI by a man named Bill O'Neill, who's played by Lakeith Stanfield. Daniel Kaluuya plays the head of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. And it is the story of this infiltration that leads up to the assassination of Fred Hampton. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know that happens, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. And there's a couple things I wanted to say about this idea of why this film is important and why this film nominating and winning awards is important. First of all, one thing, props to Shaka King for realizing, who's the director, that just selling a Fred Hampton biopic probably wasn't going to work with white film world that we live in, the white dominated film world that we live in. So he wanted to sell it as a Departed style film.
Which it is. So like, I'll give him that.
Yeah,
that's not a lie. Yeah.
Yeah. He thought it was a clever way to, quote, sort of Trojan horse a Fred Hampton biopic into the world. And so props to that, Chaka. But the important thing about the nominations that I wanted to say is that Judas and the Black Messiah is the first film with all Black producers to be nominated for the Academy Award Best Picture. With this film, Daniel Kaluuya becomes the first Black British actor to receive multiple Academy Award nominations. He was nominated as well for Get Out. And it is the first film with more than 2 African-American producers to be nominated at the Academy Awards. It's also the first time that 2 Black actors from the same movie have received nominations in the same category. So Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya for Best Supporting Actor. And so there's a whole lot of firsts in what I just said, which is reason enough to be talking about this movie and to be talking about why awards matter, because Daniel Kaluuya has already won the Golden Globe and the SAG Award for his performance as Fred Hampton, which is 100% deserved. Accent issues.
Yeah, about to say, irregardless of the fact that I don't love his accent, his performance was unbelievable.
Yeah. And the movie was co-produced by Ryan Coogler of
Who We Love,
who was Fruitvale Station, I think, right? And Black Panther, Ryan Coogler?
My memory says yes.
Yes. So we've seen the power that he can wield.
Yep.
That Black Panther, like the elevation of Black Panther.
And Daniel Kaluuya is in Black Panther as well.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important to kind of tell the lineage of this and the decisions that you can make once you're a Ryan Coogler. Yeah. And you can put your money behind things like telling the world about Fred Hampton. Because let me tell you, I did not know a lot about Fred Hampton at all. At all. When I watched this, I recently learned, and by recently, I mean like a year ago, that he was assassinated by the FBI. So, America, always 2 thumbs up. But the context for this movie is really significant. The movie itself, Dr. Kristen and I have some thoughts about watching it.
I mean, like, it's not, for me, it's not enjoyable. And
no, it's not supposed to be.
But even more so, like, I mean, as I don't love movies like The Departed either. So it's even for people who would enjoy this genre.
Right.
I don't love these kind of stories as entertainment.
It's not your jam. No.
It's just not my jam. Went through a phase where I tried to pretend it was because it seemed really cool to like say I loved The Departed. I don't, guys. I don't love movies with guns, really, unless Tony Stark is involved. I just don't.
It's not for you, and that's okay too.
Not for me. So we saw this. The reason I said in the beginning this one's a little complicated in terms of streaming, because this is part of the very incredibly controversial Warner Brothers decision to partner with HBO Max for the year of 2021, that all of their cinema releases would be on HBO Max for 1 month.
Yeah.
And so we both caught this in that 1 month window. As we record this the week before the Oscars, actually, so we don't know the outcome of this. As we record this video, this movie is not streaming anywhere, nor do we have any idea when it will begin streaming again.
Right.
It's still in theaters.
It is still in theaters if theaters are a thing where you are.
So this one's a complicated one. We recognize that a lot of you probably haven't seen it, whereas all the other ones that we've talked about so far and the final films that we'll talk about in the next 2 weeks
they're
are
like,
all available at this exact moment.
Yeah, they're straight up on streaming services. Yeah.
This one is not. However, when it does become streaming, we are not joking that you should put on the subtitles, because Fred Hampton's Chicago accent from the videos that I have watched of him is specific. For sure.
It's unique.
Daniel Kaluuya does a yeoman's job. But the transition of and he has a very working class, thick London accent. A thick London accent to a thick Chicago accent has missed some consonants along the way. And he is real difficult to understand. The movie is not difficult to understand.
No.
And the most important scene, his speech that he gives after being released from prison, is not as difficult to understand.
No.
But the reason, like the things I was there for were like his relationship with his girlfriend. And like those scenes were nearly impossible. Now, this is also, to me, a movie that tried to do one too many things. So I really, really loved the focus on Fred Hampton. But you have to focus on Bill O'Neill to tell this story. And so it felt like I didn't get enough time with some of the other elements of Fred Hampton's life that I would have liked. And then I also didn't get quite as much of the internal work that Lakeith Stanfield was doing on his face to tell us how traumatized Bill O'Neill was. I could have spent more time with him. And so in doing both of those things, I personally felt slightly robbed of both. However, I recognize that I knew more about this story than an average American, just because I had to write a paper on it in my MSW program about the Black Panthers. And so I knew a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I kept waiting for a few things to happen. I am coming into this in a completely different frame than some other people.
Yeah.
I also I always want movies that explore what the Black Panthers are. Because really all we've had is Malcolm X. So I was really glad to see like their turf wars and like some of the earnestness, like whether you agree with them or not, I think the movie does a great job of explaining why Black Panthers are Black Panthers.
Yeah.
Why this made sense to a lot of people and why it still makes sense to a lot of people in a way that didn't feel preachy to me.
No. Yeah. And it didn't feel, it was neither excusing nor condoning the Black Panthers.
Yes.
And we should say that Fred Hampton's, I don't think they were married.
My knowledge is that they never were, that she was always just his partner, his non-legal partner.
His partner, Akuya Njeri, as she is known now, and Fred Hampton Jr., his son, who are still involved in what is the current incarnation of the Black Panthers. We're heavily involved in this film. I think they did a really good job of humanizing everybody.
Yes, you're correct.
And showing the breadth of what the Black Panthers did, because I think in this country, we only see them as the like militant revolutionary, but what they saw as the whole revolution, and militancy was a part of that, but they also had food programs and lunch programs, education programs, community service, and like the whole ethos of what it meant to be a revolutionary to them was more complicated than I think history acknowledges.
Yeah.
Probably so that it can justify the assassination of Fred Hampton, if we're being honest.
But also it's a very common thing among a lot of violently, whether they center it in their platform or they simply accept it. When socialism is your goal, as it was stated by the Black Panthers, that was their goal, the social programs go hand in hand with the violent uprising.
You have to. Yeah.
You have to do it. And so it's one of the ways you can tell a flat out terrorist organization from a we will use violent means if necessary organization, which is a fine line. A lot of people don't agree with us that there is a fine line. But we have seen throughout history that there often is. So
there often is. Yeah. So I think there was value in that. The subtitles were necessary. I agree with you that it was difficult to tell both the story of Bill O'Neill and Fred Hampton. And I appreciate the difficulty that Shaka King knew he was going to have if he just sold it as a Fred Hampton biopic, even with Daniel Kaluuya behind it. But I agree that was a bit, that was a tightrope that wasn't walked as well. But could it have been walked?
It's still brilliant. There was just a couple times where I was like, this is when I want you to lean into this moment, but I know in terms of pacing, you've got to switch sides now. And
but to all this to say, especially for the acting nominations, like, even if you can't understand Daniel Kaluuya, you cannot take your eyes off him. And the same for Lakeith Stanfield. Like, they embodied these humans that they were playing in ways that had to be really challenging. One of the things I read was that Lakeith Stanfield sought counseling after this work, which I don't doubt that he did, and fair dues for being emotionally intelligent enough to seek counseling. And that one of the scenes that was filmed was the 50th anniversary of something, I forget, for Fred Hampton, and Daniel Kaluuya talked about how that changed his whole performance on that day, because everyone on set knew that it was the anniversary, and like it changed the way he spoke and the way he acted in those scenes. And he has talked about how heavy a mantle it was to play someone like Fred Hampton, and how whenever he speaks about it, how important he feels it was to tell this story. So, I mean, that fits all of our boxes for why we would want to talk about something on our channel.
For sure. And we would be remiss not to bring up that this is another example of the fact that a Black British actor is playing a Black American activist, civil rights activist. This is a bugaboo for many people on my Twitter feed.
Many folks.
Talking about this movie, that like really Chadwick Boseman is not the only Black American actor who could have played historic figures. Surely there was somebody from Chicago kind of thing. But there's also a great argument that is then made on the other side that these people, Martin Luther King and David Oyelowo's performance, and then Fred Hampton and Daniel Kaluuya's, you need a degree of removal to be able to embody them and not deify them. So we want to acknowledge that debate constantly happens, and this is another way, and another film in which that debate is happening.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that I think the accent work was a bridge too far for him, I cannot think of another Black performer right now that could do that work. I love Michael B. Jordan. This is not the kind of role that Michael B. Jordan can do with. We have not seen him do this kind of work. So it's not like I could say like, oh, you should have cast so and so. Like I can't put that in my brain. Personally.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I
mean, I'm sure someone is out there. Like I respect that. But I also, as outsiders, insiders, and we've talked about this when we talked about Selma, understand the difference we carry in our body when we talk about Northern Ireland than our Northern Irish friends. And so there's sometimes a degree of separation from lived trauma is important to be able to tell a story. And
sure,
respect that.
For sure. Because I don't think the movie wanted to focus on the trauma of Fred Hampton's life. And it was very traumatic, especially his assassination and his incarceration. But I don't think that's what they wanted you to take from it. And the other thing, too, that's like worth mentioning as we talk about what gets made and who funds what, Daniel Kaluuya is a big name in Hollywood right now.
Massive name.
So, you know, they're looking at making this movie and telling the story and putting money behind it. And I agree with you. Like, I don't think Michael B. Jordan would have been right for it. I think they needed a recognizable person to play him, to hopefully elevate it. Now, whether it's actually going to be successful in terms of making money because of this weird, like,
the COVID, who knows?
The COVID of it all, we don't really know. But successful in terms of recognition for the acting, it certainly has been. But I think that's part of it too. Like sometimes, and you know, at the time of Selma, I mean, there were a lot more people that could have played MLK than could have played Fred Hampton, I think. But I agree with you that the separation sometimes might be necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, like Broadway deals with this all the time. Like when I remember when Lauren Graham was cast as Adelaide in a revival of Guys and Dolls, immediately for me meant that I was going to go see it. And then they cast her against Oliver Platt, and I was like, no. But they were never going to cast somebody who they needed the Oliver Platt's name.
Yeah.
And he was willing to help produce it, you know? And so we, as enjoyers and purveyors of art, often forget that art is still commercial and art is still a business.
Yeah, a lot of these are business decisions. Yeah.
A lot of these are business decisions, not artistic decisions. And so that's another reason that awards are important. We're going to see Daniel Kaluuya, David Oyelowo, and Lakeith Stanfield play a lot of people over the next couple of years. And hopefully, based on their attitudes already, they're all of them and Ryan Coogler and Tyler Perry as well. The Black men in Hollywood that do have name power are using that the way that Ava DuVernay does as well, using that power to spread the table, to make the table bigger. And we know we'll continue to see that, but we wanted to address that this is an ongoing debate.
Yeah.
And one that is completely valid.
All right. So that is our thoughts and feelings about Judas and the Black Messiah. When you can acquire it on a streaming service, or whether you can go see it in a theater, please do. In a theater, you can't have subtitles on those, so you might want to wait until it's like on demand. Next up in our coverage, we're jumping away from folks of color and towards stories of women by women, and Claire Zhao's film Nomadland, which she did win Best Director at the Golden Globes and was the first Asian American woman to do so. So we will be exploring Nomadland and the glory that is Frances McDormand. We hope you will join us then.
And as you've watched this, we know you've seen the Oscars potentially. So we want to again, just once again, acknowledge that we haven't yet.
Yeah.
And at this moment,
2 days before the Oscars, so
as we talk about this, PricewaterhouseCoopers is the only one who knows who won. So please, if you're watching this after the Oscars, which again we're hoping that just means anyone's watching it, jump down below and we'll talk about how it all turned out in the comments.
Take care, everybody.
Enjoy whatever you're watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.